Dr. Gebhardt locked the door, and until I have good reason, I won't. Something tells me that he wouldn't be amused. The death of his mistress doesn't... The death of his... Lady Westmacott, may I bother you for a moment?
By all means, Mr. Zellner.
Did Miss Miller cope with all the excitement?
I think so. But what happened on the train was quite a shock for her. She wouldn't be able to go on if something happened to Matthew.
She's worried about him.
He's all she has. It breaks her heart that he lives at a boarding school and can't always be with her. But she sets her wishes and needs aside so that he can get a good education. That's her way.
Where is Matthew's father?
Gone. Run off. Ran away from his problems again. He drank a lot. More and more after each setback. It's better for both of them this way.
He left her.
She couldn't have borne it. She loved him and wanted to stick by him. She fell out with her family over him. They couldn't understand her. And when he left her, the ground opened up beneath her feet. For 2 weeks, she was as good as dead. If she didn't have Matthew, she'd be dead.
You seem to know a lot about it. I mean, about the time before Miss Miller began working for you.
I have my reasons.
And Matthew, do you care as deeply about the children of your other employees?
If you fail with your own child, you hope to do better with others, Constable.
And the idea to send Matt to a boarding school
was mine. Matthew idolized his father and blamed his mother for the fact that he wasn't around anymore. I was afraid the situation would escalate if he had to live on a country estate alone with his mother and some old people. I think I was right. He quickly made friends at boarding school. He's popular, well-liked, a real athlete according to his teachers, and his relationship with his mother has improved as well. He's headed in the right direction.
How is the questioning going?
Are you implying that I'm an eavesdropper? The inspector is placing a lot of pressure on our dear Mr. Kreutzer. He's the only one who was on the train and who doesn't have an alibi for last night.
Perhaps. But him? A murderer?
I know people like him. He doesn't have enough backbone to kill someone in cold blood and remain so calm. He'd turn it into a drama and then a farce, drink himself insensible, and then, railing at fate, pitch himself into the sea. Forget him. Legrand is wasting his time. Mr. Kreutzer just happens to be a perfect fit for the inspector's image of the Raven.
Athletic, cultured, moves among the rich and famous.
I'll eat his violin if he's the Raven or the murderer.
I have to be going, Lady Westmacott.
Please keep me informed, Constable Zellner.
Of course. Mr. Kreutzer clearly feels uneasy. But does Legrand actually think he's the Raven? Legrand is absorbed in the interrogation. He still seems pretty annoyed. The violinist seems to be bearing the brunt of it. Legrand will attend to the interrogations, and I'll handle the investigation. I won't talk to him again until I'm ready to present the murderer. Mr. Kreutzer clearly feels uneasy. Excellent. Ah, that's just what I needed. coffee is not bad at all, but 1 cup is enough. The message from the inspector. The Baroness's butler looks like he didn't get much sleep. I would describe his facial expression. Miss Miller and the professor are talking intensely. She seems pretty relaxed, by her standards. Good morning, Miss Miller. Professor Lucien?
Constable Zellner, how are you? I heard you passed out last night.
Well, not quite. I was poisoned.
Oh.
That wretch!
Who do you mean by that wretch?
That stowaway! That new raven!
The young man can't be the murderer. Constable Oliver had already apprehended him when the shot was fired.
You mean...
Whoever killed the Baroness is still on the loose.
I think I should take my leave. I'd like to rest for a while.
One last question, Professor. Do you think the eye is well protected in the safe in Legrand's cabin?
Of course it is. They assured me that it would take hours of work with heavy machinery to crack the safe. And if Legrand isn't in his cabin, Constable Oliver or I check that everything is in order every hour.
I understand.
I want to go back to my cabin. I'll see you later, Mary.
Oh, of course. See you later.
I didn't want to interrupt your conversation with Professor Lucien so abruptly.
I don't know what's wrong with him.
Learning that there's still a burglar on board seemed to frighten him.
He was so relaxed the whole time, and then...
And then the stupid Swiss constable came by and made him anxious.
Oh, I didn't mean that.
No matter. I'm sure he'll calm down and come back soon enough. May I ask you a few questions?
Of course.
How is Matt? He seems happy enough.
After all the commotion, he's already back to his old self again. But I haven't told him about the murder. That would be a bit too much for him.
I think he's made of sterner stuff.
I want to thank you again for what you did on the train. I wouldn't have known...
Everything's fine. Think nothing of it. Lady Westmacott told me that Matt's become a real athlete at his boarding school.
That's true. He's full of energy. His teachers try to calm him down with sports. He's very talented and learns new games very quickly.
I regret to say that was never one of my strong points. It must be good for his self-confidence.
It certainly is. He's settled down and he's become something of a leader in his class. A year ago, I'd have never dared to hope that everything would work out so well.
You and Professor Lucien seem to be having a lively conversation.
Oh, yes. He's an expert in ancient Egyptian art and preeminent in hieroglyphic research. He's the head of the Egyptian department in the British Museum, you know. And he's going to open an exhibition at the Egyptian Museum in Cairo.
Right. For the eye.
They had planned on exhibiting both jewels together for the first time in decades, but that's not going to happen now, sadly. I think it's quite upsetting for him.
We're working hard to ensure that at least one eye will be on display.
I know. I'll ask Lady Westmacott if she'd like to participate in the opening of the exhibition. I think it would be good for her.
And Professor Lucien will surely offer you a private tour. You're American, aren't you?
That's correct.
And you moved to England because of the job?
I lived in England before. During the Second World War, I volunteered. I worked in a pharmacy on a US base north of London.
In a pharmacy? Interesting.
Well, it was the war and everyone was sent where they could help best.
Please, go on, Mrs. Miller.
After the war, I studied music in London. I met my husband there. We married and went back to the States together.
He was also American?
No, English. But he said he had problems with his family and he wanted to be as far from them as possible.
And you gave up your studies for him?
Well, yes, I did.
Life as a single mother couldn't have been easy.
It was pretty tough then. I worked from morning till night and it was still only enough for the bare necessities. And I couldn't give Matt all the attention he needed.
And then Lady Westmacott entered your life.
It was like an angel appeared to me. She must have offered me the position out of pity. I had no experience as a carer. She made me a generous offer. I couldn't believe it. And she really adores Matt. She's offered him a good education, and now he has every opportunity in life.
An almost unbelievable story.
I'm still afraid that it's a dream and that I'll wake up one day.
How does it feel to work for such a world-famous person?
The work is very interesting and varied, and it pays well, too.
You are very lucky that the lady offered the position to you.
I just hope she won't change her mind one day. What would become of Matt's education then? I really make an effort to measure up to Lady Westmacott's expectations, but sometimes I feel like I fall short.
Lady Westmacott couldn't ask for a better companion.
I'm saving up as much money as I can all the same. I'd do anything so that Matt doesn't have to give up his new life.
If you worked in a pharmacy, you would certainly know something about medicines and poisons.
Everything is a potential poison, Constable. It depends on the dose.
Have you ever heard of chloral hydrate?
It's a tranquilizer, isn't it?
I'm asking you.
Well, Lady Westmacott also asked questions like that, for her last novel. But since I've never wanted to kill anyone, I never bothered with things like strychnine and arsenic and all that. I could recommend something for a headache, a sore throat, or rash.
That's kind of you, but there's really no need. Lady Westmacott dropped a hint on the train that she killed her hero, Partout. What did she mean by that?
Oh, she must have meant the manuscript.
Manuscript?
She always takes it with her. It's an unpublished Partout novel. I once asked her why she never published it. She said that according to her will, the novel's only to be published after her death.
And in it, Partout will be killed?
Maybe. I've never read it. No one has. You'd better ask her yourself.
How was last night for you?
It was awful. I was having a conversation with Edgar, Professor Lucien, here on the forecastle. Then I wanted to look for the lady and went forward via the side deck. When I passed the Baroness's cabin, I heard a muffled scream.
You heard a scream?
Yes. I thought the Baroness probably had a fall. I went to the door and listened for a moment. Since I couldn't hear anything, I knocked on the door and asked whether she was all right. There was no answer.
Interesting. And then?
I didn't know what to do, so I tried to open the door. It was locked. I saw the Baroness's butler, Mr. Inch, on the forecastle. I thought he might have the key and went back. On the way, the bobby crossed my path, and then Edgar, who wanted to check the safe. I explained the situation to him, and then the alarm went off.
How did the scream sound?
It was a short outcry, very frightened, as if someone had been startled.
Was it a woman's voice?
Yes, the voice was high.
So it could have been a scream from the Baroness. Possibly because she discovered someone in her cabin.
Possibly.
That person might have threatened her with a weapon.